Well, it's good that you're here. I'm glad you're interested in it because this is like something that I'm very interested in. And I was director of finance for the Head Start program in Billings for 20 years. And when our staff came together, because they, at the beginning of the year, then we started everything all over again. I would start talking about the fiscal part of it. And, some people would just glaze over. Sometimes they'd fall asleep. I have a friend, dear friend, that every time I started talking finances, she said, oh, I have a headache. So I'm glad to see you venturing forth. First of all, I would just like to pray. Lord, I just thank you for the opportunity to share information that can help someone else. And Lord, you gave me the power to stand up here when I gave my heart to you in October 1976 at a Lutheran church at the altar. Hallelujah! And ever since then, the only way I can stand here is through you. Father, I also pray for a bad situations happening in Seattle with a shooter in a church. The grandmother asked for prayer from our area. So Lord, you be there in the middle of all of that. Lord, we give you this time we have together and that your name be glorified in all things. Thank you so very much. Amen. Anyway, it was just hearing about the situation in Seattle was something that just made my heart drop. I know the grandmother said that a teacher had been killed and another one shot someplace and her grandson was there and he's terrified. I can't even imagine that. So anyway, on to the mundane. So first of all, as I mentioned before, I worked in Head Start for 20 years. I was my first degree out of high school was in data processing with a business emphasis. That was back when data processing was a word for computers, and the computers at that day were in huge rooms that needed to have lots of air conditioning because they ran hot. But I learned the logic of programming to know how that goes. So as things went along, I had the advantage of being home with my children, and when my son was 15 years old, I was asked if I would apply for the job as the accountant for Head Start. That was in 1987, and all of a sudden these computers that were in big rooms are now on desks. Now we have them in our hand, don't we? So, and at that time, my first degree was only an associate's degree, so I went back to college. It took me 7 years to get my bachelor's degree, but boy, I learned a lot of good accounting. So, and working with a not-for-profit helped me understand how 501c3s can be lost, how fund accounting can keep you really stable with what you're doing, and that the outcome will be really great. So that's what I hope to present here, and I've done accounting for Northwest Montana Head Start. I was over helping the Blackfeet tribe getting their accounting system up and ready with another colleague from Josephine. So we've come around to the point where there are requirements, and so I'm a believer and I follow what needs to be done. I don't want to see anybody to lose that opportunity. So I do have lots of experience, and I'm still learning something every day. I'm really a learner, and I love to learn more things. So I need to find out kind of who you are. How many of you are in a church that only has 2 employees? Like our church only has a pastor and a bookkeeper. Okay. How many have 3 to 5 employees in your church? Okay. How many 5 to 10? Okay, and how many over 10 employees? All right, so the understanding is as you start out small, it's, my whole goal is that you get as much as the basic requirements are. As you get bigger, then you need to have more requirements that you follow. IRS is not a happy camper if you make mistakes, even if you don't have a clue. The dear lady that retired so that I have started working with Journey Church in Columbia Falls. She had been doing the bookkeeping for a long time. She didn't know she wasn't doing it right. And so it could have been very, very bad had IRS come back and wanted to penalize her for that. So there's a lot to be learned, but yet there's a lot of information out there. And I do have some little handouts that anybody that wants these are just some of the resources that I found. Many of them are free, and you can just read about. There's one on a toolkit for your church financial toolkit, and it has some basic information that's really helpful. So you can find a lot of good information on the internet and start processing that through. So, and I'm more than willing to answer questions or point people in the direction they need to go, because I started at Journey Church in January, and it wasn't until close to the end of February that I was able to produce an actual correct W-2 for our pastor. And there's only 2 of us in that church. So there were just a lot of unknowns. And IRS has gotten pretty particular, and we know the church is not their favorite people. And so we want to be above question. So that's what we'll do. So I loved what Ellie started out with when she started talking. She said, do you have a strategy? Do you have a way that you want to accomplish a mission within your church? That's exactly how it is with church finances. The financial reports should be able to tell you if you're accomplishing your mission. If your mission is helping the needy or the homeless, do you have funds? Do you have people? Do you have that strategy set up? And is there adequate funding to be able to accomplish that? So it's always good for boards and pastors to sit down and make sure that their strategy is being accomplished and that they're on the same page, because we can all get off and left field if we don't kind of keep track of it. And then the other thing I want to start out also saying is do you know what the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant? A bookkeeper generally does the data entry. She will put maybe the deposits in. Maybe she'll keep track of all of that into a software system. She also may pay bills. And bills will be coded with the fund that things should be in. But an accountant, as we go through and get an accounting degree, then we know that there's more to it than that. The accounting degree should give the reports that will give the board the information they need for making decisions. And that's a really important part of the whole package. Now, what I'm hoping we'll do at Journey Church is that they will hire a bookkeeper to come in, and I have donated my time to be the accountant to oversee those things. Are things starting to look good? Are our cash flow wrong? I mean, what are things that require board decisions? You should be able to see that from your reports. And the Lord knows you just can't do everything. So it's good to have that. I know that if they would get a bookkeeper and an admin person at Journey Church, and I could just stay with the accounting and the reports, I could give more intense reports. Now, if you are in a big church, the bigger churches do need to do their statements as the government wants them for FASB. And FASB stands for Financial Accounting Standards Board, which is what the feds have said. That's what churches, 501c3, all 501c3 items, that's what they're required to do. So,
Can I ask?
sure.
Is
Please.
Can you want to engage? So, at what point, the size of a church would that be?
Well, we know mega churches.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, if you hear something bad about a mega church, there is an evangelical financial accounting organization that you can be part of. And then you can have your financial statements audited and presented to them. We're little churches. I mean, churches aren't required to do any financial statements, but it's a promise to your donors that you are taking care of the money they want. You're only the carrier of the money to accomplish the purpose that your board has. So you want your board to make sure that they know what their purpose will be. I mean, there's operations, you have to pay the light bill and those things. But then what are your purposes? And those tend to be the funds that you want to track, which is why you can do income statements, that's the business term, it's called statement of activity in not-for-profits. But you can present that and say, yes, this is what came in on that fund, this is what's gone out. Now are we utilizing the donor money as they want? And then there's a difference between donor restricted, which the donor will say, I want this to go to this piece of equipment or something that we need to have, security things or something like that. That must be followed, because at any time, if it's not followed and that donor finds out that they gave you hundreds of dollars for something and use it for something else, they can come back and sue you. So one thing you can't do, if a donor wants to give you $10,000 to start a casino, and it's like, I'm sorry, man, that's not part of our out of our purpose. That's not within our thing. Then you can go back to the donor and say, you want to change what you want it for? Do you want the money back? It is that strong. So, in not-for-profit accounting, you can keep track of that in fund accounting.
So if somebody does that and they're put in your coffers in the bank, do they need to release that by a letter or something? Or is it verbal?
Believe me, you want to get anything written down that there was a donation for $10,000 and I want it to go to build a casino or something. And then you can go back and say, that's not part of what we do. We want to minister to people as we can, but we don't want to build a casino. Now, the Indian reservations have some, a thing with the IRS that allows them to do casinos and have income, but we're churches. We're out there to help the people. So we want to maintain our particular mission statement. And, again, you talk with your board so you can hash out that in the best way that you can to understand these are the things that we want to keep doing. We don't, how the devil is. He always wants to get in the details and say, yeah, but wow, that'd be a good idea. You need to stay firm with what your goal is. So those are really important things that you remember. Some of the elements of a good financial system include fund accounting, so you know where your individual funds are. As I mentioned, the way our fund accounting was in this first little church I was in, was they had a different ledger page for each fund. And then I've been in some where they've had different bank accounts. And that becomes so cumbersome. Then you have to transfer back and forth and everything else. So fund accounting allows the ease of having everything in one bank account and splitting it. And it's kind of like, I like the illustration that they had mentioned in one of these, is that it's like a pie. A pie is one whole wonderful pie, but each slice could be one fund. And you want to keep each of those separate and want to know what income came in on that fund and what income went out. And you always want to make sure that you have it expended as quickly as possible. Now, if you're saving up for a huge remodel or something like that, you can start saving up for something like that and use it as you get to a point. We just, it's just exciting. Hey, anybody know about Dave Ramsey? Okay. In our church on Sunday, we had, it's paid off, and everybody was shouting because our church debt is paid off.
Praise God.
What a blessing. God spoke to the heart of a couple, and they came to the pastor and said, God said, let's pay off the building.
Yeah.
So those are the things that you want to be expended as quickly as possible. So believe me, we wrote a check to Church Extension Plan. So now we're free and clear on that. Now the board will get together and they will spend some time in saying, okay, we were paying this much out a year for the payment. We now have that freed up. Where do we want it channeled? So when we do our budget, we do budget things like that. And so we will change. They will change. But the reports that I give them have to show where is the most need. Maybe benevolences, which is something that our church has really wanted to reach out and help people. And right now, we know there's a lot of homeless people. There are a lot of people that that need help. They're just kind of like out there needing help. So again, it's where the Lord puts it on your heart, that your board can talk about what needs to be done. And your strategic plan has something to do with that. Another thing that's very, very essential is internal controls. I love the internal controls, and I've seen this in other churches too, but within our church, we get the donations on Sunday. We have 3 people in that office. 1 person counts the money. 1 person makes photocopies of it all, and I even request that they make photocopies of the cash, because I don't want anybody to wonder. And then and another person totals it. And then when I go through and I do donations on the computer in the software, I can donate, I can list all of the checks, and then the cash that comes in with who gave the cash, and then I have even an anonymous. Somebody will throw $100 in anonymously, and I'm going, wow. But I want that safeguarded. It's really important. Another part of it is paying bills. It's so easy to just go down and buy something and not get the invoice or what it was back to the person that needs to pay the bill. So making sure that you're not buying things that are not approved. And much of what my belief is that if this is within the budget and it's been approved by the board, if you're a small church. Now, if you're a big church, you'll have to handle it a little bit more difficult or more concise. But if it's within, like the electric bill, you just pay it.
Yeah.
So those are things that may not need a request for money to be spent. But if somebody wants to buy something for the sound booth, which is what we just updated in our church, is all the equipment that provides the sound and the video and all the stuff that it has, we want to track how much that is to know that it's within our budget. And if the budget needs to be changed, it's only a guideline. It's not a do or die thing, but it does need to be changed. And so, your accounting department needs to know about that because they'll track it. Finally, the account needs to be able to give the board financial reports. And what, we probably all know what balance sheets are, but in not-for-profits, because there's no equity, there's no owners of the business, it's called a statement of position, which indicates how much you have in your assets, how much you have in your liabilities, and what's left is your net assets. So it's not any one particular person. And many times those net assets can be broken down by your different funds. So you can see what is in each. There might be $10,000 in the bank, but there might be $30,000 that's in restricted assets. So then the remaining would be what your operations are. Those are the things you need to evaluate. And then another thing is that You need to do bank reconciliations every single month. There are churches that I've seen and individuals that, they don't do it. They need to be done. Another topic that, another topic is payroll. IRS has done different things with pastors' payroll in particular. You can do 1099s for people, like we have some cleaners that come in and they have their own cleaning business, and so we can hire them to come in once a week to come in. We don't direct them, other than saying, well, that room needs to be cleaned and that room needs to be, but you don't need that one. But they have their own equipment and they're 1099 independent contractors. For a long time, pastors were paid 1099s as independent contractors. IRS has now come out with topic 417, I think, that actually says if you're going to have a pastor, and he has to be ordained and credentialed and everything, but that the assumption is that he is a gross pay, but you can also, the board can establish that he has a housing allowance. Way back in the old days, it was always a parsonage attached to the church and they all lived together. Now, that's not, you don't see that very often. But pastors have to go out and rent things and, live that way. So when figuring payroll for a pastor, the church needs to figure out how much their clerical salary is, and that is paid gross. That's their income that would be put on their W-4. Then they would get a housing allowance, and that is not included in their gross income. But that housing allowance, you must have Social Security and Medicare paid on that. So that comes in as a separate tax item. So I'm really glad that we have a software that does split that out really, really good. And so because I had to go back and amend all of those, it will be done right. There's no issue about it. But this other company does that really well with payroll, and they'll put out the W-2s and the quarterly reports and all that's needed, and they'll be correct. And I always go through and make sure that they're correct, because it is kind of getting, it is confusing. It is very confusing. So,
What software do you recommend?
Oh, I don't dare do that because I'm just getting into fun. But what I'm using right now is called Aplos, A-P-L-O-S, and there are some things in it that I don't like. I mean, I would like to be able to run reports on check numbers, but I've only been into it for about 3-4 months. So another one that they have, and it's on this list, is Iconcmo, I-C-O-N-C-M-O. Anyway, that has some really good stuff. And if I had seen it before, I might have looked at it, but we were just desperate. I started in January and I needed to get payroll going. Well, we couldn't even get payroll going. So it was being done by QuickBooks. Then I had to try and sort out QuickBooks and all the reports that were in there so that everything would equal. So it's been a real challenging thing. Well, Pastor Dave gave me several questions that people have brought up and asked him about. And I'll go through some of these questions if you have more questions, or if you want, I can send you this presentation. I can just email it to you. I'll give you my name and number and email, and we'll do that. But let's go through some of these questions. The first one is, do you need to file any paperwork with IRS or Secretary of State on an annual basis? That Secretary of State, you need to file your, basically it's your name, that you are in business still. It's $20 filing fee. This last year it was free. And But you do that every year. It has to be done by the 15th of April, like a lot of stuff. So, but as far as IRS, until you get to be a certain size or there's certain requirements, you don't have to file any reports for IRS. When I worked for Head Start, I had to file quarterly reports to the feds for what the program was doing. And then at the end of the year, there's something called a 990 that had to be filed. But because, and I did all of that, but because for the churches are generally pretty small, those are not required. One thing you have to be careful is if you have unrelated business income, that, and that would be like if your church is running a daycare center or something, and so they're getting income from this daycare, and it isn't necessarily the mission of the church to provide for the children. So that then there's another form that you would have to fill out for unrelated business income. And you can do that, and you would then probably pay some tax on that, and it gets into a much deeper subject than I dare get into. The next question would be, what's a good accounting program for a small church? And I reviewed a lot of programs. And knowing that QuickBooks was not doing it, I knew I wasn't going to go there. And so there's a lot of really good possibilities out there. And even on this list that I have, and I'll give you this, you can have for yourself.
So you don't recommend QuickBooks?
No.
Okay.
QuickBooks doesn't give you the ability to do the fund accounting so that you can see what is in every fund. The gal that did this before me spent hours. In fact, part of the reason she had to require is because she had migraines that were just taking her away. She would have to take things out of classes or out of anything else. I realize that QuickBooks says that they can do it. But when I went back to QuickBooks and said, the pastor's being paid wrong, can you correct it for all last year? Oh no, they didn't. They couldn't do that. They didn't know how to do that. So there, you can even, one of these things, there's even a Excel spreadsheet that you can use. And if you are pretty good with Excel, you can do it on that because it breaks things down by funds. And again, getting into the actual fund accounting. And it's sad because many CPAs don't have a understanding of that, or many accountants, unless they've worked in it. Then they'd have a knowledge of it. But a lot of them don't. I think a lot of CPAs, because they do audits, would have more knowledge of fund accounting in schools, but not so much in churches. But there are, on this list I have several you could look up and see what there are. But I would more than happy to help you move from QuickBooks into something else now that I know how it all is done. All right, do we need to fill out a 1099 for guest speakers or employees, and why is this important? 1099s, even for your pastor, if your pastor has been given an honorarium or a gift or something, they need a 1099 for that portion. And for guest speakers, if it's less than $600, they don't require the thing, but still, if you have a lot of income from a lot of different places, which a lot of pastors may, and itinerant pastors or evangelists, or they may be in many churches, so they probably need 1099s for everything, because they have to figure out their income and know what all of that is.
So like a missionary, say you don't give it directly to them, you send it to their account at general counsel, then you wouldn't do a 1099 for them, the general counsel?
Right.
Because it was sent to their account,
Right. General counsel does that,
Just to clarify that one.
I would think. Well, I think, yeah.
They would take care of it on their end, because they're just.
Right. And 1099s, it depends on how much, if a evangelist comes in and talk, you're not going to tell him what to say. You let God tell him what to say. So that the amount of control over you, what you want the person to do, has something to do with whether it's a 1099 or not. And if it's a continued thing, like cleaning services. Once a year we have someone come in and clean all the windows in the church because they have the equipment. So
However, just a clarification, if you have somebody who helps you out part-time, say like a part-time worship leader or pastor, they're not on staff, but they fill in occasionally, but you still give them a certain amount of instruction and they have to be there for a certain time for practice and so forth, then they would have to actually become an employee, wouldn't they? Not a 1099.
Probably not a 1099, unless they do that at many different churches.
Yeah.
They may do presentations,
Right.
worship presentations at different churches. Then probably it's going to be on a 1099.
But
But
even if they're on a rotational basis with other potential.
yeah, I wouldn't take the chance. I would just have them as an
Right.
Well,
employee.
especially for workman's comp.
Yeah.
then-
Yeah, you want to protect that too. Oh, and pastors don't
Yeah.
get, unemployment. Pastors don't get unemployment either.
Right, right.
Anyway, another question was, do we need to have records of monthly board meetings and annual business meetings? Yes, that is most definitely what you need to have. Every corporation or every business needs to have that. And so that's also really good to be able to step back and look at. That helps you see where have we come. So those are really good things, but you do need to have those.
And kept forever.
Yeah.
Yep,
Permanent
yep.
record.
Should churches consider pastors self-employed, or do they need to report it on a W-2 form? And so now comes the I would say employed, and then if they have housing, then you have that second issue. So on a W-2 for a pastor that has housing, you will have in box 1 what their gross federal wages only, and none of the amount for housing. And then for the next amount, that's then listed down in box 14. So say housing allowance, and then you see how much that is, and then the pastor uses that for their self-employment income form on their 1040. Do pastors get a double deduction if they own their home and receive a housing allowance? And it's not really a double deduction. It is handled differently. So, and the interesting thing is a pastor's clerical salary, it all gets, Social Security added to it, but his housing allowance, he has to pay Social Security on that also. So again, that helps him when he's on Social Security. Believe me, I know, I'm on Social Security, and hallelujah, we have money, we live. There's no problems with that, but, so you can still do it.
Sorry.
If there's is there such a thing as an exemption?
Yeah, so they have to apply, it's within that first year of becoming credentialed and becoming.
Yeah,
pastor,
and
they
it's
apply.
a vow of poverty, so
Yeah.
you don't see it in too many
It's
churches,
not
but
recommended.
yeah, and it's in a Catholic church, you see it a lot. And I think the Catholic Church then provides something for the priests or something, but they can do that, and you can read the instructions, and I'm not sure that is.
If you talk to any financial advisors, they tell you do not do that. Because then you can't get your Medicare and all of that.
Yeah. So, and how much do you designate for a housing allowance? I can't even talk. I have 2 forms. We talked about what record retention, what things are permanent, what things are not. This is basically the AICPA, American Society of CPAs, that has put this out, along with FASB, but also from this company. This is a company called clergyfinancial.com. This is a form. And so on this form, it says the housing allowance and what would be allowable. And so they can put in this, and then the board can decide. And it needs to be a decision on the board, and they need to approve it, and it needs to be available if anybody ever comes. And the pastor, it's the responsibility of the pastor at the end of the year to have all the receipts.
So, a question, I guess, because we've kind of seen that. What if the board's like, I don't agree with that amount, we think that's way too high for a housing allowance? How does that, can a board be like, that's not realistic?
Sure. the board can decide. I mean, it has to be approved by the board, so
Right.
they can decide what it is, but it's really good to go through and say, okay, average rent is this much, you're paying this much for rent. We would pay the average, but you seem to be paying a lot more. So there are those decisions that are within the board's things. But anyway, this is a kind of a good form and to have it in the file all the time. So again, that's,
What did you call that again?
I wrote it down.
it is a Clergy Financial Resources, and it's from a company, www.clergyfinancial.com. And so it's a form, and you know, I'll share with anything you want. And you know, housing is different for everybody in every place. Housing up here, no, housing in the Flathead Valley is very expensive. Housing in, we went through some small towns getting here, and it's like, oh, those are cute little towns, and you probably could rent something for less than $2,000 a month.
I can tell you, like Sheridan, housing or renting is probably more expensive, almost like Bozeman, in a small town.
Sheridan, Montana.
Yes.
You know, isn't it funny how they've just really pushed the thing up? I have a friend down in Colorado Springs, and she said, okay, you know, pray for me. We got to see, my rent has just gone up $500 a month.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so now, by the grace of God, I'll find some way to pay it. So, yeah, it is. And the final question that Dave had was what type of retirement plans are available for clergy? And there are, you need to see a financial advisor, but there are plans that will help you capture. I think it's, you know, important that pastors have something. And a lot of, like in the Lutheran Church, I think they have a regular retirement funding that you can get into. So, you know, those are the things you have to look for your personal size of your church and everything. So, did I get this? Ooh, I have 2 minutes. Any questions?
So, I know the housing allowance has been talked about. I know some people get like a auto allowance or a medical allowance. Are those, they're treated as the same as your housing?
When I was at Head Start, I put together a retirement plan for the employees. When we started, there were 21 employees. By the time I left, there were over 200 employees. So we found we had some, you know, you can choose what type of a benefit you want or what you don't want. Again, you need to factor that all the way across. What is that going to cost the church? And, you know, anytime you can do a benefit, and this is Dave Ramsey, if you can do a benefit that is matching, that grows a lot faster. If you can put in 2% and the employee puts in 2%, then that's helping both of them, and it starts growing really good. So, but look at a financial advisor with some of theirs. And there are some good, I know, my husband and I were facilitating Dave Ramsey we did it for several years in Billings, and then up here the last 2 years. And they have financial people that you can talk to. So I wanted to talk to them, what they were. And so I talked to 3 of them, giving really good information, and they're not high pressure salesmen. And their big thing is, are they teachers? Are they going to teach you what the finances would be good for you or not be good for you? So, you know, along Ramsey's way of doing things, I really like that. Mm-hmm.
In the beginning of your conversation, you talked about the difference between a bookkeeper and accountant.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as the role of the corporate treasurer?
A corporate treasurer can be the person knowing what goes on within board meetings. If the account, I mean, like I always went to board meetings with Head Start, but that you don't have to do that. They can be the person that can present the financial reports to the board. So they need to work really, really close with the finance department so they can understand what that is and then present any questions that the finance person says, wow, I'm really kind of, you know, worried about that. Take it to the board, let the board make the decisions. But definitely work with them. And our treasurer, she approves checks to be written out. I mean, I make her do this. I don't think she did before, but I said, I want your okay on there that it's okay to pay it. Because I don't want to see things in there that I don't know. And I'm only new doing your books, so it's a learning thing for me too. But they can be really helpful in giving more information to the board. And then they're also, if they're on the board, they're part of the decision-making and the voting part of it. So it's really, it protects everybody. And the last thing you want to do is out there in left field and doing it all by yourself, and all of a sudden you've crossed a line that should not be crossed. So anyway, my name is Bonnie Wilson. If you want information, I'll give you my number, my
You don't have to pass out a paper, I'll do it.
I am.
Hand them to me.
Yeah, there you go. And my phone number is 406-885-3311. And my email is bwilsonconsult at,
I'm still stuck on the number.
oh, okay,
Phone number.
406-885-3311.
Oh, 33.
What was that other sheet you were talking about? Was that a handout?
That one I can send it to you, but I only have one copy of it, so I didn't get copies of all of that. But if you just, if you just request it, I can certainly send it to you. Okay, that's a
Bonnie
good
Wilson.
request. Did I answer? Did I give you all the information?
Yes, just the
Your
email.
Wilson
email.
Consult
Consult
at
@gmail.com. I'm sorry. I was a consultant for years. For Head Start, I did reviews all over the country of Head Start programs, and I did private bookkeeping and a lot of stuff like that. So, but I'm retired,
Yeah,
I
bet.
think. I don't know how people find me, but I love doing this. And I enjoy working with people, and I'd be more than willing to help anybody in any church that needs contact. So, okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for listening to the Montana Ministry Network podcast. The Montana Ministry Network is a network of 82 Assemblies of God churches across the state of Montana. To learn more, visit us online at www.montanaministrynetwork.com.